Hello, and thank you so much for joining me on today's training. My name is Jack Knoxville. I use he and they pronouns. I am the founder and executive director of Trans Empowerment Project. And today I want to talk to you about hosting a clothing swap. So, if you haven't already, please make sure you fill out our sign up form for hosting a clothing swap, which is available on our website. In this training, we're going to go over some introductions, which I've already done. We'll talk about what a clothing swap is, why TEP is organizing them, and how to organize a swap in your own local area. So, as I mentioned, my name is Jack. I use he, they pronouns. I am a multiracial, disabled, queer, and trans mask individual who became the first trans guy to run for political office anywhere in the southern United States. When I ran for mayor of city of Knoxville in Knoxville, Tennessee, I'm also the founder and executive director here. If you would like to share yourself, your stories, your experiences, please use the Memory Fox campaign, which is included in this training, to do so. And let us know why you've decided to hold a clothing swap. You can also leave your feedback in the comments below. And yeah, when you're making your recording on Memory Fox, though, just to let you know, Memory Fox is a video platform that will enable you to record your video response to my prompt. So when you are recording your intro, please make sure you're holding the phone vertically and that you're facing the camera. Also, make sure your microphone is not obstructed in any way or blocked, and check your lighting just to make sure people can see your face. Also, relax, sit back, hit record, and just, yeah, follow the prompts. All right, so let's begin. All right. So in 2016, I lived in Knoxville, Tennessee, where the Don't Say Gay bill was law of the land. And there were a lot of people that were members of the two spirit, trans, intersex, and gender expansive community who were dealing with isolation and in dire need of support. I was one of them. Um, Despite what was happening there and all of the anti trans rhetoric that was going on, I personally knew we deserved better. I was in the middle of transitioning myself and trying to figure out where I was going to get support. I was also in dire need of clothing. I needed community. I needed everything: mental health support, physical health support, you name it, I needed it. So I did what I knew how. I leaned on my friends, and I organized what would become the first clothing swap to kick off this organization. So, first of all, let's talk about what a clothing swap is. Clothing swaps are that. They are an opportunity for people to exchange clothes and get new clothing without it costing them anything other than maybe a shirt. Although you don't have to actually swap anything out to receive clothes for during clothing swaps. The idea is essentially there that if you're if you're taking something, you should also give something, but not everybody is. Everybody is in that position to give, and that's okay. Clothes are a very, very abundant resource in our community and in our culture here in the US, and so clothes are everywhere. So what I did was I made a Facebook post and I asked my friends for help. As you can see, here's the first group that showed up. And then together we began reaching out to people we knew to see if they had clothes that they wanted to get rid of. And we just started picking all the clothes up. Within 2 weeks, we had enough clothes to give away free clothing to over 100 members of the two TIGE and LGBTQIA community in just one night. So, why do we like clothing swaps and why do we continue to have them? Well, first and foremost, clothing swaps are a great way to create a safe and affirming space for members of the community to come together and to have at least one of their basic needs met. On top of community, it's clothing. right? It can be very difficult to be able to go into a store and purchase clothing that fits a gender that others don't feel matches your identity. And it can be very overwhelming, especially right now in this day and age where, you know, trans lives are very much under attack and under a microscope. All lives are under a microscope because of the anti-trans rhetoric, and the white dominance culture that is pushing through our country. But also, the why with clothing swaps is because these are events that everybody can just have fun. You don't have to look a certain way. You don't have to fit into a certain style or size or whatever. It's an opportunity for everybody to just throw all their clothes in a pile, figure out some new clothes that fit you, and leave feeling like your true, authentic self. It's a great way for the community to get together and just experience some joy. At the first clothing swap that I organized, um, I had a band come out. We also had Planned Parenthood and the Knoxville Center for Reproductive Health that showed up. And so we made it a party. And every clothing swap since then has progressively gotten better. So, when you're planning your first clothing swap, there's a few things to consider. The first step to organizing a clothing swap is the planning, though. And so, if you just answer a few real basic questions, we know you can do a great job of setting up your own successful clothing swap from the beginning. So, here's some basic questions for you. Think about when you're going to hold your event. Do you want to do this during the week? Do you want to do it in the morning, the evening, weekend? Do you want to do it closer to a major holiday? Is it better to not when people are going to actually be in town? You have to figure that out based on your location and the people you know in your community. Also, where can you hold a swap? If you're just trying to invite in a couple of friends and people that you're already comfortable and familiar with, by all means, use your home. But if you're doing this for the general public, you don't want to use your personal house, or any private location for that matter. You'll want to look into using um, partnering with an organization that already has a location or a company. For me, the first time I did my clothing swap, I leaned on a group that has a house called the Birdhouse in Knoxville. It's an artist collective house where they do all kinds of cool events and parties. It's a community resource, and they were super cool and super kind and kicked me the house for free. Actually, I think I paid $50 for it, but it was such a low cost for being able to utilize an amazing space for the hours upon hours that we use the space. So that leads me to the next question. Who are you going to invite? Again, if you're going to invite people that you already know, you're already comfortable with, that you know are safe enough, you can totally invite them to your house. But, maybe you want to reach out to the bigger community. Do you want it to be just people who are 2TIGE? Do you want to make this a full community event, and included our allies and potential allies? That's up to you. And also, what do you need to have a successful event? Meaning, material wise, like you need clothes, obviously. You need a location, which we know. You know you're going to need people, but what else do you need? So, let's take a second and think about the what else before we move to that next slide. Um, think about the fact that you have volunteers who are going to be standing there because, in all honesty, you can't do this by yourself. You're going to need volunteers, okay? So, as you're thinking about your volunteers, think about the fact that this clothing swap might be, I don't know, maybe you're going to have this open for 2 hours, right? But there's going to be some setup time. So, before the swap starts, before you open it up for everybody else, it's going to take a minute to get set up. You're going to need to organize your clothing, set it up, arrange it, whatever you're going to need to do. And then you're going to also need time afterwards. So for a 2 hour event, you might actually be planning on a 4 hour volunteer time. And if that's the case, you're going to have volunteers who are going to be hungry and thirsty. Do they need to come with their own food and stuff? Do you want to spring for some waters and or pizzas and sodas or something? Um, A lot of times you can actually call your local places like Domino's and say, hey, we're doing a community event. I've got a bunch of volunteers and I wanted to see how much it would be for some pizzas. Um, if you tell them that it's for a nonprofit, they'll give you a discount. So things like that are really important to think about. Also, think about other materials that you might need. Are you going to hold any kind of raffles or anything? If so, you need raffle tickets. You're going to need signs for all of your clothing. You may need somebody who has a little hand dolly to wheel clothing. You may need bags, garbage bags, grocery bags, all kinds of things. Ways for people to take the clothing out of your swap. So, in addition to planning those parts of it, we do need to talk about the when. Okay, so let's dive into when. So, like I said before, when you have your swap is totally up to you. Certain times of year, spring and fall, seem to be the most impactful for the community because that's when people are in transit and also when the seasons are transitioning. So it can be really helpful to have your swaps closer to things like Trans Day of Visibility and also Trans Week of Awareness, or maybe even a little bit earlier, like the end of October. But timing your swap with events like that can help these events feel more celebratory and give your community a reason to come out. So if you're having a hard time connecting with folks, maybe that's the way you want to go, is to say, hey, we're doing this Pride clothing swap. It helps. Um, as I mentioned, when you're setting this up, you got to think about the commitment of the time that it's going to take before and after your setup. So make sure you're really planning on that 4 to 7 hour window because that's probably about how long you're going to be busy with this swap. You want to make sure that your times and dates are accessible to your audience. In other words, you don't want to plan a clothing swap for 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Monday, especially if your goal is to bring in a bunch of folks, who might have jobs. Um, it'd be different. Like, yeah, think about the weekends. Think about the evening hours. Think about when more people are going to be available and more likely to not have to work. Also, if you are timing this event with a holiday, make sure it's during a time when people are actually going to be there. Because I know, certain places I've lived, folks travel a lot for the holidays, especially Christmas and Hanukkah and end of the year celebrations. So sometimes those are not the best times for swaps. And also, before you settle on a date, make sure you're getting consensus, especially from your volunteers, people who are going to show up and help you. It's good to know that they're going to be available during the times you want to hold the swap because it doesn't make sense if you're trying to organize a clothing swap. Let's say you're going to do a swap in September and all of your folks are going to be busy. All of the people who said, hey, yeah, I want to help out, they're all going back to school in September and they're no longer going to be able to help. So if that's the case, then you're going to want to organize your swap maybe a little bit before September to make it more accessible for them. And also in thinking about who else you're inviting into your space. Once you've chosen your date, shoot us an email and let us know. Send us an email at info@transempowerment.org and we'll promote for you. The next thing we want to dig into again is where to hold your swap. So here's some things to think about when you're trying to decide where you're going to hold your swap. You want to think about whether or not this location is actually going to be accessible. Meaning, is there quiet space for folks who become overstimulated? Is there a ramp for wheelchair access? Are you near a bus line? Is this location accessible for bus riders and bike riders or people who need to walk? Are there food and beverage options on site? In other words, if you're going to hold this in a bar or a restaurant and they've got like a back room, you're good. You probably don't need to worry about having accommodations for other people, although it would be great if you had the ability to provide a little budget of some kind, maybe free drinks at least for your volunteers. But Typically, as long as there is food and beverage on site and people have the opportunity to purchase some, you're in good shape. What you don't want to do is have people committed to working for you for 4 to 7 hours and not have a way for them to even get a bottle of water. That's not helpful and it doesn't take care of your folks. So think about, what are the needs that your volunteers are going to have? So not just you, but also your volunteers and also people who are showing up to attend your event. Also, just a word to the wise, and I mentioned this before, if you are not sure about anybody who's coming to your event, if there's one person that you're like, I've never heard of this person before, I don't know who this person is, please try not to organize your swap in a private residential area. Keep yourself safe. The last thing is think about, yeah, what do you need from a venue partner? So, do you need somebody who's going to make sure that their kitchen is staffed while you're having this event? Or are you okay with just utilizing a building space that doesn't have their kitchen accessible? If there is no food and beverage options on site, what are you going to do? So again, I mentioned you can do things like call your local Domino's and let them know you've got a charitable event going on. Domino's is great at giving like reduced prices for pizzas and stuff like that, especially for community events. But if that doesn't work, you can also reach out to people with food trucks and things like that. So the next thing to think about is who are you going to invite in? And I touched on this before, but we'll go a little bit deeper here. But think about how many people you should invite. So let's say you have found this great building that accommodates about 80 people. That's a decent sized building. You have to look at what the fire marshal code says. If you have this place that has room for about 80 people, there's no need to necessarily promote this to thousands of people because you're not going to be able to house thousands of people for any given amount of time. You're going to need to really think about and keep count of how many people are in this location before you hit that 80 or 85 mark, whatever it is. So then you got to think about, do you want this to be a small informal thing with just some friends? Do you want this to be a much bigger, more open, broader community based event? Either is fine. It's up to you. When you're thinking about your guest list, the first thing you want to do is think about who are your helpers. Who are the people who can show up and help you organize this thing? Who can help you get all the clothing organized and laid out and making sure that there are bags and labels and all the things available? Who are the people that can show up and help you make sure that this event stays safe? Who can act as a door person? Who can make sure that, all of the logistics are taken care of? Is there a medic that you have available? Somebody that can help you in case, somebody has a medical emergency. I don't know. There's lots of different folks who can be helpful that you should really think about inviting in first. And then you can think about other members of the community that maybe you just want them to show up and have a good time and not have to worry about carrying any of the heavy lifting. One of the next things to think about is, should you offer tabling? If you're trying to make this clothing swap also a fundraiser, tabling is a great way to go. Tabling can also make sure that whatever expenses you're running into get covered. Um, so you can reach out to organizations who are in your area that are also aligned in doing similar work. You can also partner with for-profit companies, like looking at folks who are involved in, say, like the fashion industry. So makeup artists, hairstylists. You can check out our friends and our partners at Hair Has No Gender. Hair Has No Gender has a great and growing list of stylists that are looking to provide affirming cuts and color and style, and who are badasses out there looking to help this community get in touch with our inner rock stars, so that we can be our best selves as we face the world every day. But you can always invite in partners like that and say, hey, $50 a table, and these folks will pay to table and have a presence at your swap, especially depending on what your output or the number of people who are showing up might be. As I've mentioned before about the food situation, I know I've brought this up a couple of times now, but you cannot underestimate how important that question is to be answered and to make sure that there is some kind of food on site for volunteers. It never fails. Whenever I have had a large scale clothing swap that I was inviting in community members for, I always ended up with at least one person who was having some type of emergency where their blood sugar was crashing or they were extremely dehydrated or something. And so it was always good to just make sure that there was something available. And if you can't afford to, spend the money up front to bring a caterer or to have pizzas or whatever, that's okay. Sometimes you can turn these, I mean, you can absolutely turn these things into potlucks. Invite members of the community to bring food to the swap. So, especially your helpers. Maybe that's one of the helpers you have. Maybe you have a friend who loves to cook. Speaking of Hair Has No Gender, I went to a great clothing swap at Logan Parlor. And Hair Has No Gender, Logan Parlor threw a great clothing swap, and the owner made this fantastic chili. There were snacks on hand, bottles of water, and everybody was able to just come in, grab a little plate of food, look around at the clothing, and just have a fantastic time. So a little bit of food goes a long way, and food is also very communal. People love to chit chat when they got food in their hands. So feed your folks. And again, if you have run into an issue where you're expecting to have like a large turnout, let's say you're going to be doing a big community event, you're like, oh crap, how am I going to have food for hundreds of people? Reach out to your local food truck vendors. If you don't personally know one, find one and let them know, hey, I'm having an event and I'm expecting a turnout of X number of people. Sometimes these folks, especially if they're not busy, will be more than happy to come park outside of your event, especially if they know there's going to be a solid turnout, because that's guaranteed money for them. So, I've had a lot of success with it, and I highly encourage you to do so too. But really, you get to define your clothing swap. Who's coming, where it's going to be, when it's going to happen, all of the things. One of the next parts of a clothing swap, though, is to think about how you're going to handle the clothing donations. This means how people are going to get clothes to you before the swap, and then what you're going to do with the leftover clothes after the swap. Because I guarantee you there's going to be leftover clothes after that swap. I don't care if it's you and two of your friends, you're going to end up with leftover clothing after that swap. The reason people are bringing those clothes to your swap is because they want to get rid of them. So they're going to get rid of them. And they will leave them right where they sit. And so it's going to be up to you as the host to figure out, what are you doing with those clothes? In the past, one of the things that I've been able to do, which has been really helpful, was to reach out to local organizations like the UU, which was a wonderful partner for us in Knoxville, Tennessee, and then Planned Parenthood, Pride Centers for like the University of Tennessee Pride Center was a good partner for us, and we had several organizations that had community clothes closets. And so I reached out to them and said, hey, listen, as long as y'all are willing to make sure that trans people who come in to receive services are cared for, please come to my clothing swap and take as many leftover clothes as you'd like. And they knew that they essentially got last dibs on stuff, but what they did was we divided and they took a bunch of clothes afterwards. So that was helpful for me because I didn't have to worry about transporting it. And I will tell you, depending on how big your swap is or how many times you have swaps, they're going to get bigger. The first one I had, at the very end, we gave away clothing to over 100 people and still filled the back of a pickup truck. And I mean, over towering this pickup truck. By the third clothing swap I did, we had a 15-foot U-Haul of leftover clothes. So please do not underestimate how many leftover clothes you may end up with. But you need to think about that ahead of time and figure out, like, what am I going to do if I have a 15-foot U-Haul of leftover clothes left? What are you going to do? And also, how are people going to get them to you? So, do you want people to wait until the day of the swap to show up and be like, "Here's a bag of clothes," or or do you want to do pickups ahead of time? One thing I found is that doing things the day of made it very difficult for us to organize the clothes and to keep that stuff organized. So, having people make the donations ahead of time and then scheduling the event gave us a chance to organize and distribute the clothes a little bit better than doing it the day of. But that being said, I have also had swaps where we had lots of volunteers and they were able to help us stay on top of it. So again, really up to you how you want to do this thing. Some other considerations and resources that we have available for you is we actually have an event safety guide, which will be linked into this training as well. And if not, reach out to info@transempowerment.org and we'll make sure you get the safety guide. But oh yeah, we also have this 10 tips for managing volunteers. Some tips on there are clearly communicate expectations, through multiple channels. This is also a whole file that you can look at, but being flexible with your scheduling and responsibilities, encouraging support, um, give people trainings, make sure that they know what they're doing, they know where to find the things, don't just make assumptions about their abilities and stuff like that. All of that is included in your 10 tips for managing volunteers. And then we have an entire slide deck full of clothing labels that say things like mask tops, femme bottoms. So lots of labels that you can just access and print out so that you're not having to figure out all of the labels on your own. All right, so just to recap, here's your action items. Pre-swap, what you're going to be doing is nailing down the details. That's everything from the time, the date, the location, who your helpers are. You're going to train them, recruit them, help make sure they know everything they need to know about your swap. Then you're going to get to that point of inviting attendees. Then is the day of the swap. So during the swap, coordinate with your volunteers to make sure they know where things go, how to handle events and situations that may happen. They can answer any questions that they get hit with as folks are showing up to your swap. And also, take the time to engage with folks. Take the time to say thank you to the people who show up during your event. Take pictures, take selfies, shake hands, talk to people, listen to what they say about your event and how things are going so that you can do an even better time the next time. Listen for areas of opportunities to partner with these folks and to build relationships with them. And then after the swap, you're going to want to thank everybody who showed up. So maybe that's including a sign up form during your event so that you can collect a list of attendees and send out an email to say thank you. If you need that kind of support, let us know. info@transempowerment.org and we will set that up for you. We'll give you a QR code, all the things, so that you can make sure your event is a success. Also, please make sure you report back to TEP. Let us know how it went. We have a feedback form so that you can let us know, did we miss anything through this training? Through your experience, did we miss anything? Is there something that would have been more helpful or beneficial for you to have? Or tell us how great it was. Hopefully that's what the case is, and we hear about how wonderful of a time you had. And if you want to share your story with us, please leave your feedback using this link or QR code. Both this QR code and this link will take you to the same form, which is our Memory Fox campaign, where you can do what I mentioned earlier and record your own story of experience. And that's it, folks. That is everything you need to know about hosting your own clothing swap in your community. And I hope that you have a great time and that your community, gets a chance to come out and see what you are building for them. So if you run into questions or have any concerns, any issues like that, feel free to hit me up directly. My email address is jack@transempowerment.org, or you can use the info@transempowerment.org email address. And a member of my team will be more than happy to reach out and respond to any questions you have. So thank you so much for taking the time to watch this training. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you have an amazing event. And thank you so much for showing up to help make sure that more folks in your local community get access to the clothing needs that they currently have. I am so excited to be in community with you. And if you have not already joined our community Discord, please do so. If you need a link to that, you know how to find me. You also know how to reach out to the rest of the team. But we would love to stay connected and to hear more about what you have going on in your own local area. Have a great day, and thanks for watching the training.